Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. A little bit of background on me. I've been in sales pretty much my whole career. I think I knew I'd be in sales when I was growing up. I used to work when I was 12, I got paid to work in a pharmacy. I'd take my money, I'd buy wholesale candy bars, I'd bring them to school and make 100% markup. And I
Handy
just
arbitrage.
continued that path. And after school, I joined a company that was in the conference and education business for tech events and trade shows. And I joined as the lowest person on the totem pole, and I quickly saw how much money the sales team made. And I was recruited to join it. And so I started, I did a really good job with my close percentage, and I was recruited to take on the most challenging account at the company, and also the most lucrative. So in the 2 years that I was in that role, I was able to pay back all my student loans. And at that point, I was hooked. So since then, at many companies, I've been in the role of a vice president of sales, and then and always doing a little bit of carrying a bag and leading at the same time. And then I made a choice to join a company that was in the information publishing space. And from there, I just said, you know what? I just like helping people. I like helping entrepreneurs. I like building businesses. That's what I am. And I started Just Tell Us. So Just Tell Us has been in business for about 13 years. And we provide advisory services, sales advisory services, fractional CRO services, help with playbooks, training, etc. And we work primarily with small to mid-sized businesses.
Yeah. So what I heard was that you like the financial freedom.
I do.
Go- How unusual. And but you went to, I know the school you went to. My brother went there. And it was
Yep.
mostly a finance and accounting school, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and that's a funny question. So I went there to be an accountant, and after about a week, maybe a week and a half, we'll give it a week and a half, I said, "Wow, this is just not for me." I'm a hockey player, I'm an
A week.
athlete, I'm a competitor, and it was really that fast. And then I called home and I said, I'm going to be undecided until I figure it out. So I got a degree in management with a concentration in marketing, which is a lot better fit for someone with my interests and just my personality. So that's a great question, and I'm so happy I made that decision.
Well, tell us about the personality because I sense the competitiveness. There seems to be a clear sense of intensity
Yep.
and passion.
Absolutely. I grew up in a family that was a pretty tough family, and the expectation was that you would work hard and play hard, and for me and my parents to afford me playing sports, it was a big sacrifice. So I worked hard at it, and I played hockey at Bentley, and since then I've played 2 times a week, and now that I'm in my mid 20s. Well, not really, but now that I still play twice a week, and I just love the camaraderie, the competition, and it's the way I've always been. So, when other kids were in high school and they were doing other things, I was working 50 hours a week as a landscaper to make as much money as possible. I bought my own cars. I paid for things that other people didn't. And I didn't come from a family that had a lot, right? And it's just who I am. I'm pretty intense, but I'm also that's kind of my front. However, I'm not. So once you get to know me, you know that there's nothing I like more than just relationship building, stepping back. But I do have an always on attitude, and I've tried to work on that over the years so that I would sleep more and breathe every once in a while.
Yeah. And hockey is not only expensive, certainly while you're still growing,
Yep.
highly competitive
Yeah.
and very physical.
Yes.
What
Yes.
position did you play?
Defense.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was part of my game.
And
I was actually very small when I was in high school, and I grew in my junior and senior year of college. But I was always a very physical player, and that just came from, if I'm going to go in the corner and get the puck, and you're going to get the puck, I'm going to come out with it, and that's how you have to think. And it's much like sales. If I'm going into a competitive situation, and I know that others are in there as well. I have to figure out how I can come out with the sale, right? And the only way I want to come out with the sale is if it makes sense for both parties. But it's that's at the end of the day, I think that in sales, and even when I hire salespeople, I look at, where are you competitively involved in sports? Which ones? Are you better served as an individual contributor, a team leader, team member? It all plays out in the individual's personality pretty quickly. And I think it's one of the greatest things in life, for anyone who wants to proceed with this profession.
yeah, because my next question was, did you see any correlations between hockey and sales? We got the
Absolutely.
one about getting the deal no matter what, as long as it works.
Yep, absolutely. There are a lot. Sales isn't always about being the shiny penny, in order to get the deal done. And I think too many people that jump into sales need that recognition that they closed the sale. I'd say that the one of the greatest lessons hockey taught me, because I wasn't one of those people at hockey. I served a role, and did it well. Is I didn't need the accolades. I didn't need that. The financial piece is great. It helps me to have a better life. It helps me to pay my bills and make investments and those types of things. But at the end of the day, I didn't need that, right? And at the root of who I am, and how I think I've forged my path in sales, I was just tried to do better than everybody else at pleasing the prospect, at creating relationships, at not being annoying, at respecting them. And I have had so many of my clients say, I get called all the time. When I see you call, I answer, because sales is a relationship, and especially, larger scale sales, right? There's different sales, right? Everything's a little bit different, but it starts with just being genuine and really caring for, your company, and your clients are all part of the same team.
Yeah. And that litmus test of whether you have a relationship or not is just that. They see your number, do they pick up or not?
Exactly.
Because they don't need
Exactly.
probably don't need anything at that moment,
Right.
but they want to talk to you anyway.
And the key thing there is, don't always call them and try to sell them something,
Right.
right? It doesn't have to be like that. Call them because you saw something that might interest them, and just, be thoughtful. How do you differentiate yourself in sales? Be memorable. Be memorable for the right reasons, right? And it's served me well, and it's part of what I try to to um, to share with, new folks entering the sales profession, as well as founders who, a lot of my clients are founders who've either great ideas, they're innovators, but they really haven't been selling, right? They need help trying to figure out how do I build this business and make it profitable, so I can, or get the traction so that I can raise money, so I can exit, so I have options, right?
Yeah.
And be genuine, be kind, be nice at the root of what you do.
And after college and stuff, how did you learn great selling?
I had some fantastic mentors. We had some really good sales training programs that I went through. I think that the number one thing that I benefited from is, when I took my first role and got promoted, I ran a conference and exposition called the Salesforce Automation Conference and Exposition, which morphed into the CRM space, into CRM, marketing automation. And so I spent every day talking with leaders at Salesforce.com, at Siebel. They were my biggest client, and helped many of the NetLedger, went to NetSuite, helped them move their company forward, and I get to spend time with them. So I lived with, enterprise software companies that focused on sales growth, on marketing automation. And it was absolutely invaluable as I look back in the rearview mirror, just what I was able to learn during that time.
And the mentorship, because a lot of young, salespeople think they've got it figured out, that things have changed for them. That's old school selling. I've got the new way of doing it. What did the mentors teach you?
Well, first of all, be a sponge. Listen to everything, but you don't have to do everything that I'm telling you, right? Listen, morph what works for you, test it into your own style. I think that that's hugely important. Um, Nothing in sales is better than experience. Failure is the greatest lesson, right? And when you can figure out and you have somebody that you can speak with and say, this is what happened, and dissect it and figure it out, it just makes you stronger. And then once you've done that, you move on, right? I always get asked the question, what's the most a sale that you were really upset that you lost? And my standard answer is, oh, none of them, because I've moved on, right? So it's hugely helpful. And so I was lucky to have um, three or four people that I can point to that have shaped my career. They've invested time in me, and I try to do the same for others. The I think I have a lot of things that have worked for me and continue to work for me are not exactly what others would say are top of mind or things that you might want to do. But I can tell you that, as an example, um, I'm not the type of person who would make a gazillion calls and have the metrics of, hey, I did all this
Well,
activity.
I think we've heard enough then.
Right. What I will tell you is that while the other people had a 20% close rate, mine was typically in the 80+% range. So, everyone started to come to me to figure out, what do I do here? So I get promoted into different areas, and then we could go down that path of how that changes your comp and your whole life from that point forward. It's just, mentors taught me that there's no better way to be successful than preparation. And my dad used to talk about, it used to be the 6 P's, but I've changed it to 5 P's. Prior preparation prevents poor performance, right? And so if you can be super prepared for everything that you go into, and you're competing for a deal, and all of a sudden the people get you've got this committee that's evaluating, what do I buy here? What software do I buy? And they're like, wow, they were on it. They might be a younger company. They might be a little bit riskier, but wow, I felt like they listened. They recapped. So I was always taught, sell three deep, people change. And I think that that's so relevant today. People are changing careers all the time, but the power of the recap, in the power of succinctly recapping, never going over one line, right? Not being verbose and getting it down to such bullet points that they use it in their own internal presentations is how I've won an awful lot of deals over the years. And
Yeah.
I got that from my mentors.
And that's pretty much aligned with hockey, right? Because it's practice, 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 right at the casual part of the day, too, right?
Yep, sure
Right
is.
around 5 a.m. And why do you think people don't get the practice part of it? Because I think today people are just practicing on prospects, which isn't practice. It's
It's
losing.
not. I would advise anyone who's starting in sales to use the same advice given to me. Spend a half hour a day, 2.5 hours a week, trying new things, right? Sampling different types of software, reading up on different types of approaches, right? That's manageable time. If just put down the phone and just spend the time, don't get distracted, and try it out. Some things will work for you and your strategy, some things won't. And I think that is I don't think enough I don't think enough people do that today, right? And well, the sales profession has changed. One of the great things that in hindsight used to drive me crazy is a lot of what we did, we didn't want to pay for our reps to go on, outbound sales calls or go on trips. So from day one, I've sold on the phone primarily. I've sold
Yep.
on video conferences, and how do you get more efficient at those things, right? And at the end of the day, how do you qualify fast, right? And tell the prospect, look, there's other companies, and share share who they should maybe look at. Be helpful, and that help has generated so many referrals from people who haven't bought things from me, right? Because they said this guy might be able to help, use your help. Why don't you have a
Yep.
chat, right? And they just tee it up. So I think that you know there's just sales. You never stop learning. You never stop learning different ways to go about things. But there's basics that will never change.
And how did you avoid that numbers game trap of, trying to make the most amount of calls, send the most amount of emails, the most amount of proposals?
The sales reports don't lie. And so, everyone's like, how can we get people to be this efficient? Right. I think that where I think that where sometimes it became more challenging was on the comp side on future years. So the management, before I was in management, would say, hey, how can we get this guy to hit those numbers? And could he get that much more if he hit those numbers? And you'd have, conversations about, do you think you could do that? And it's like, well, you want the sales, we're going to end up at the same number at the end, right? Maybe. Or would you like to see how we can continue to build on what we have? And I've always been a top performer, right? In every company that I've been at.
And but you have, from the 15 minutes I've talked to you, the intellectual capacity to do other things. Why do you stick with sales?
I like it. I like build. I'm on a I'm a board member. I help build companies. I I've done operations. I've essentially led companies, right? But I always am involved in. I just like it. I like helping people solve problems, and I think that at the root of what we do, everybody has their challenges and their problems, and they have needs. And if you can find people who have those problems, and you can show them how you can fulfill those needs, and you can do it in a way that's articulate, while you're still trying to move through the process fast. If you can do that, then I feel like there's every day you've accomplished something,
Yeah,
right? It's like a lot of people take care of their lawns. Why? Because after they do, their lawn looks great.
they
you
see it.
know
Yeah.
and if you know that your client is better off at the end of the day, or your prospect is better, there's you are a happier person, because you kind of you feed off of that, right?
And what mistakes do you typically see reps making that keep them from going from a B player to an A player?
I would say it's really hard when you're learning the sales kind of environment to not have respect for your time, right? And you start to have you just take calls, and you try to force something to close that isn't a closable opportunity, and you just develop those habits, and a lot of those are driven by just inexperience, and also by perhaps the culture, right? And so I would say that you know there's just a lot of it's being able to read the audience is a skill that it takes time to learn, right? knowing when to say somebody's late for a call, they're 10 minutes late, and you have 20 minutes or you have 15 minutes left, and knowing to say, hey, let's reschedule this instead of trying to force the opportunity forward and not get the time and respect that you deserve because you've prepared, right? So I think that there's that confidence that you get over time when you've been doing this, where you realize how to, my favorite saying in the world is to slow down to speed up,
Yeah.
right? And it works. I think that I think how individuals ask questions and just the words they use, like the I want, my two least favorite words in sales. It sounds like and I know that this isn't popular because of the nature of how it's used today, but it just always reminds me of some child in a store that wants a bag of chips and they yell, I want, I want, I want. And I remove that from everyone who works with me from their vocabulary, right? There's better ways to forge relationships. Asking better questions. Don't ask no questions. Don't control the sales process by just being thorough, right? And making sure that you've achieved the objectives of the agenda. And and I don't know about you, but how often do you get a call and you have like a sales call and there's no agenda to it? It's 80% of the time, right?
Yeah. So what do people do? They go by instinct.
Right.
Imagine playing hockey by instinct. No rules, no structure, no practice, no systems, no plays. It'd be mayhem.
Mayhem. Yeah, absolutely.
You raised a good thing when you said know how to read a room. And that can translate to a lot of things. Read the situation, read the deal, read the person, read the company, read the need. There's a lot to it, isn't there?
It sure is. It sure is.
What goes through your head when you're trying to do that?
If you're in the room and you look around the room and you see that the body language, is somebody on their mobile phone? Are they taking notes? Or are they not? Is their pen down or is it not? Are they leaning back in their chair in a negative kind of, all
Or
those things, right? So it's easy when you're in the room to figure it out. And that I go directly to that person and start asking, what, and I bring them into the fold, whether it's a good idea or not, I do, right? Sometimes, but
ignoring
but
them isn't working.
ignoring them is not working either. And you know that they're the ones in the room that are going to be the people to kill the deal. So focus on where the potential issue lies, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you're on a call, if somebody just wants to get off the call, get off the call. If somebody seems like there's something else going on, or they're getting sidetracked because they're late, their day has gone, be thoughtful. Seems like this isn't the right time. How about tomorrow? You ask them sometimes when you're open tomorrow, right? And so you're being thoughtful, but you're also controlling the next step, right? These are things that take a lot of time, and and you know you will not sell to somebody who you don't have their attention. It just doesn't work, right? So why try to? Why not be thoughtful? Why not be helpful? And the word help is thrown around a lot, but at the end of the day, that's what we do. We help people with problems find solutions. That's what we do.
And how did you build up this type of confidence? Because this is very different than most types of confidence in sales.
A lot of practice. I was a vice president of sales at the age of 27. I fast tracked through a company and I was a sponge. I went to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and I was the last person to leave every day. My wife and I used to joke that we had in our home when we were before we had kids that the carpet was basically worn out just to where we would eat and then sleep, right? And many, just so many sales experiences and over the years that have been challenging. And I think you get to a certain point in your career where um, you're confident enough that in your ability, and it just takes time.
And how did you prevent it from going to the bad part of confidence, the know-it-all level of confidence, where
It
you're the opposite of a sponge, you're a brick?
it the rule of thumb, and maybe not perhaps on this call so much, but I listen more than I talk on calls. Um, Maybe 30% of the time I speak, and then 70% of the time I listen and ask questions. I've been able to learn how to, and I know that there's plenty of AI tools out there today that work great. Um, but I could type a full conversation and and still pay attention. It was a skill that I learned early on. And part of the reason I learned it is because I couldn't read my own writing. It was that bad. And so I was able to quickly, to listen. And when you the more you listen, you can get the cues, right? And it's just common sense that if you have someone who's who's busy and they're not giving you the attention, they're not buying from you, right? So read it, and if they don't want another time, then you've just saved yourself cycles, right? At the end of the day. So um, I would say I bring it all back to great mentors.
And what do you tell reps that want to become great, that are either the know-it-alls or they blame it on something other than them, the situation, the company, the product, the economy? You ever
Yeah,
run into
that
that?
no, no. Well, so to a certain degree, there are some times when maybe they have some great points, right? And so you say, well, how can I put it back on them? How can we fix it, right? How can we fix it? What are your, and I talk it through, right? And when someone complains an awful lot, it's it could be your best salesperson and it could be a worse salesperson, right? Excuses, there's a difference between excuses and complaints, and there's a fine line. But at the end of the day, if you go back and you look at the totality of their kind of their how they go about their day, to me, it was all about how many meetings did you have? How many meetings were completed? How long were those meetings? Did you go over? Did you go under? Did you follow the process? And how many of those things converted? And I would just say, look, let's do this. Let's listen to some of these calls together. Let's go through it. Let me validate some of these concerns. But I always, and I don't know if this would be popular opinion, but I would let them vent, because oftentimes when someone vents, they can move on, right? And I would listen, and then you help them solve it. And when you do that, and they are willing to listen, and they find that success, well, now they want to work for you for a long time.
And what sales skill or ability do you feel is your strongest?
Closing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you do, or what do you feel you do differently?
It's all the steps getting up to the close. It's differentiating yourself, building trust, recapping. The recap is the greatest thing ever. And even if you didn't capture it right, it gives you an opportunity to clarify. it gives you the opportunity to have that recap shared with the whole team that's going to be evaluating the solution. So they understand exactly why they're looking at the solution. And there's all kinds of steps that go along with that, but it's down to details, right? Are you if you were to bring it back to hockey, there's a lot of really good hockey players. Those hockey players that want to perfect certain things are the best at what they do. I learned from that because at that point I wasn't the best at that. And I realized what it takes. So I would say that at the end of the day, that and the confidence to ask for the sale at the right time, you're not really selling at that point, right? You've kind of led them to a conclusion that
It's the
they've
next
made,
step.
right? They've made that decision. You've just helped them get there with in a thoughtful way.
And in the recap, you use the word why instead of what. Why they should be moving
Yes,
forward with you versus what you do better than everyone else.
correct.
How did you come to the conclusion of the why? Because most reps focus completely on the what we do and what you get.
A lot of reps focus on features and benefits, and I focus on business outcomes,
Yeah.
right? And I also bring it back to, when you're successful, painting the picture, when you're successful, what does it mean for you? Right? What does it mean for you in your career and your progression? Now, it goes a long way, right? Um, Everyone wants to move forward. Everyone wants to make money, get more responsibility, and progress in their careers. And if you can be part of that process, well, you've got a friend and a referral for life. And that's how I've always looked at sales.
Right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Mark. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, and my company's Just Tell Us. So justtellus.com is our website.